Let me ask you something brutal. How many times have you known exactly what you needed to do, had the perfect plan laid out in front of you, and then done absolutely nothing? How many dreams have died not because you didn't know what to do, but because you simply couldn't force yourself to do it? You're not alone. Every single day, millions of people wake up with good intentions, clear goals, and the best of plans, only to find themselves stuck in the same cycle of procrastination, overthinking, and excuse-making that has held them back for years. They know what they should be doing. They understand the steps. They have the knowledge. But when it comes to actually taking action, something inside them shuts down. This isn't a book about motivation. Motivation is a lie. It's unreliable. It's temporary. And it's the reason why most people fail. This is about something far more powerful. The science and psychology of forcing yourself to take action even when you don't feel like it. Even when you're scared, and even when every fiber of your being wants to stay comfortable. What you're about to learn will fundamentally change how you approach any goal, any challenge, any dream you've been putting off. You'll discover why willpower fails, why motivation is a trap, and most importantly, how to build an internal system that forces you to take action automatically, consistently, and relentlessly. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will never again wonder why you can't seem to follow through. You'll have the tools, the frameworks, and the psychological understanding to become someone who executes without hesitation, who moves forward despite fear, and who turns ideas into reality faster than you ever thought possible. Chapter 1. The Action Crisis. That's destroying lives. We are living through the greatest action crisis in human history. Never before have so many people had access to so much knowledge, so many opportunities, and so many tools for success, yet remained completely paralyzed when it comes to taking meaningful action. This isn't about being lazy or unmotivated. This is about a fundamental breakdown in our ability to bridge the gap between knowing and doing. Think about it. You can learn anything online. You can start a business from your bedroom. You can connect with anyone in the world. You can access the accumulated wisdom of humanity with a few clicks. Yet depression, anxiety, and feelings of being stuck are at all-time highs. Why? Because access to information, without the ability to act on it, is torture. The modern world has created the perfect storm for action paralysis. We're overwhelmed by choices, distracted by endless entertainment, and conditioned to seek comfort over challenge. Our brains, which evolved for immediate survival, are now bombarded with abstract goals, long-term thinking, and delayed gratification requirements that they simply weren't designed to handle. Most people blame themselves for their inability to take action. They think they're weak, lazy, or just not cut out for success. But the truth is far more complex and, ultimately, far more hopeful. The inability to take consistent action isn't a character flaw. It's a predictable result of how our brains work, how our environment is designed, and how we've been conditioned to think about action itself. Your brain is not your friend when it comes to taking action. It's designed to keep you safe, comfortable, and alive. Taking action, especially meaningful action, that could lead to significant change, represents uncertainty and risk. Your brain interprets this as danger and activates every possible mechanism to keep you where you are. This is why you can know exactly what you need to do and still find yourself scrolling social media instead of working on your goals. The action crisis goes deeper than individual struggles. It's creating a society of people who consume endlessly but create nothing, who plan obsessively but never execute, who dream constantly but never build. This epidemic of inaction is robbing the world of innovations, solutions, and contributions that could change everything. But here's what most people don't understand. Action isn't a personality trait. It's not something you're born with or without. It's a skill that can be developed, a system that can be built, and a habit that can be trained. The people who seem naturally action-oriented aren't gifted with special genetics. They've either stumbled upon or deliberately developed the psychological and practical frameworks that force them to move forward despite resistance. The cost of inaction isn't just missed opportunities. It's the slow death of your potential, the gradual erosion of your self-respect, and the compound effect of regret that builds with every day you don't take the actions you know you should take. Every moment you spend knowing what to do but not doing it, you're training your brain that you're someone who doesn't follow through. You're building an identity of inaction that becomes harder and harder to break. This crisis affects every area of life. Relationships suffer because people know they should have difficult conversations, but avoid them. Health deteriorates because people know they should exercise and eat better, but don't. Careers stagnate because people know they should take risks and pursue opportunities, but choose comfort instead. Dreams die because people know they should start working toward them, but never take the first step. The solution isn't more motivation, more inspiration, or more planning. The solution is understanding the mechanics of action, the psychology of resistance, and the systems that force forward movement even when your brain is screaming at you to stop. What you're about to learn will give you the power to override your brain's default programming and become someone who acts with purpose, consistency, and unstoppable momentum. Chapter 2. Why motivation is your enemy. The biggest lie you've been told about success is that you need to feel motivated to take action. This lie has destroyed more dreams, killed more potential, and created more frustration than almost any other piece of conventional wisdom. Motivation is not your friend. It's not reliable. It's not sustainable. And it's definitely not the foundation upon which successful people build their lives. Motivation is an emotion. And like all emotions, it's temporary, unpredictable, and largely outside of your conscious control. Basing your action on motivation is like basing your financial future on lottery tickets. Sometimes it works, but it's not a strategy you can count on. Yet this is exactly what most people do. They wait to feel motivated before they take action, and then wonder why they can't maintain consistency in their efforts. The motivation trap works like this. You get excited about a goal. The excitement feels good, so you mistake it for sustainable drive. You take some initial action while the feeling lasts. Then, inevitably, the feeling fades. When it does, you assume something is wrong. You think you've lost your passion, that maybe this goal wasn't right for you, or that you just don't have what it takes. So you stop. Then you wait for motivation to strike again, creating a cycle of sporadic effort that guarantees mediocre results. Successful people don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems, habits, and psychological frameworks that force them to take action, regardless of how they feel. They understand that action creates motivation, not the other way around. When you take action first, especially when you don't feel like it, you prove to yourself that you're capable of more than your emotions suggest. This creates genuine confidence and momentum that motivation alone can never provide. The motivation industry has convinced millions of people that they need to be inspired to take action. Motivational speakers, videos, and books provide a temporary high that feels like progress, but actually prevents real progress. They give you the emotional satisfaction of growth without requiring the work of growth. You feel like you've accomplished something just by consuming the content, which reduces your actual motivation to take action. This is why people can watch hours of motivational content, read dozens of self-help books, and attend multiple seminars while their lives remain exactly the same. They're getting their emotional needs met through consumption rather than creation. They're experiencing the feelings of progress without making actual progress. It's emotional junk food that provides temporary satisfaction but no real nourishment. The dependence on motivation also creates what psychologists call learned helplessness. When you repeatedly wait for motivation to take action, you train your brain to believe that action is only possible when you feel a certain way. This makes you a slave to your emotions and weather patterns of your mood. You become someone who can only function when conditions are perfect, which means you rarely function at all. Real action happens in spite of how you feel, not because of how you feel. The most important actions you'll ever take will happen when you're tired, scared, uncertain, or completely unmotivated. These are the moments that separate the successful from the average. Anyone can take action when they feel good. Only the exceptional take action when they feel terrible. The alternative to motivation is something far more powerful: commitment to a system. When you commit to a system rather than relying on feelings, you remove emotion from the equation. You don't ask yourself if you feel like doing something. You simply do it because it's part of your system. This eliminates the internal negotiation that wastes mental energy and creates opportunities for excuses. Professional athletes don't wait to feel motivated to train. They train because it's Tuesday, and Tuesday is training day. Professional writers don't wait for inspiration to write. They write because it's 6 a.m., and 6 a.m. is writing time. They've removed the emotional component from the decision-making process and replaced it with automatic behavior. This doesn't mean successful people don't experience low motivation or negative emotions. They absolutely do. The difference is they've developed the ability to act in spite of these feelings rather than because of their absence. They understand that feelings are information, not instructions. They acknowledge their emotions without being controlled by them. The shift from motivation-dependent action to system-dependent action is one of the most liberating changes you can make in your life. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of waiting to feel right before doing what you know you should do. It transforms you from someone who acts sporadically based on internal weather patterns to someone who acts consistently based on predetermined principles. Chapter 3: The Neuroscience of Resistance and How to Override It. Your brain is working against you every time you try to take meaningful action, and it's doing so for reasons that made perfect sense 50,000 years ago, but are completely counterproductive today. Understanding the neuroscience of resistance is crucial because you can't overcome an enemy you don't understand. What feels like personal weakness or lack of willpower is actually your brain's sophisticated survival system doing exactly what it was designed to do. The human brain evolved in environments where change meant danger and consistency meant survival. For the vast majority of human history, stepping outside of known patterns, trying new things, or taking risks could literally get you killed. Your ancestors who were more cautious, who stuck with the familiar, who avoided uncertainty, were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. This is why your brain treats any significant change or challenge as a potential threat. When you decide to take action toward a meaningful goal, several neural systems activate to stop you. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, interprets the uncertainty of new action as danger and triggers fight, flight, or freeze responses. This is why you might feel anxiety, fear, or paralysis when facing important tasks. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. Keep you alive by keeping you the same. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive decision-making, requires enormous amounts of energy to override these survival instincts. This is why taking action feels so mentally exhausting, especially at first. You're literally fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming every time you choose growth over comfort. Most people give up at this point because they think the resistance means they're doing something wrong. Actually, resistance means you're doing something right. But here's the key insight. These neural pathways can be rewired. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections and patterns, means you can literally train your brain to support action instead of resist it. Every time you take action despite feeling resistant, you weaken the neural pathways that create hesitation and strengthen the pathways that create momentum. This is why action becomes easier with practice. Not because the tasks become simpler, but because your brain becomes rewired for execution. The resistance system operates through several predictable mechanisms. First is the planning fallacy, where your brain overestimates the difficulty and underestimates your capability of completing tasks. This makes everything seem harder than it actually is, creating psychological barriers before you even start. Second is the negativity bias, where your brain gives much more weight to potential negative outcomes than positive ones. This makes risk-taking and change feel irrationally dangerous. Third is the status quo bias, your brain's preference for keeping things exactly as they are. This manifests as procrastination, excuse-making, and finding reasons why now isn't the right time to take action. Fourth is analysis paralysis, where your brain keeps you stuck in planning and research mode because thinking about action feels safer than actually taking action. These aren't character flaws. They're predictable neural responses that can be anticipated and countered. The key to overriding neural resistance is understanding that you don't need to eliminate these feelings to take action. Trying to wait until you feel confident, motivated, or fearless is a trap, because these survival systems will always activate when you're doing something meaningful. Instead, you need to develop the skill of acting with resistance, not without it. One of the most powerful techniques for overriding resistance is the 2-minute rule. When your brain is resisting a task, commit to doing it for just 2 minutes. This bypasses the amygdala's threat detection because 2 minutes doesn't feel dangerous. Once you start, momentum often carries you forward because the act of beginning changes your brain state from resistance to engagement. Your brain realizes the task isn't actually threatening and stops sending alarm signals. Another crucial technique is environmental design. Your brain responds to environmental cues more than conscious decisions. If you want to write, put your laptop and notebook on your desk before you go to sleep. When you wake up and see them, your brain interprets this as normal routine rather than new action. You're using your environment to signal to your brain that this action is familiar and safe, reducing resistance. The concept of implementation intentions is also powerful for overriding resistance. Instead of making general plans like, "I'll exercise more," create specific if-then scenarios. If it's 6 a.m. on a weekday, then I will immediately put on my workout clothes and go to the gym. This creates automatic behavioral responses that bypass the decision-making process where resistance typically occurs. Understanding that resistance is neurological rather than personal also helps you develop the right relationship with discomfort. When you feel the familiar anxiety, fear, or hesitation that comes with meaningful action, you can recognize it as your brain's predictable response rather than evidence that you shouldn't proceed. This reframe transforms resistance from a stop sign into a signal that you're moving in the right direction. The ultimate goal isn't to eliminate neural resistance, but to build tolerance for it and develop systems that work despite it. Professional athletes feel nervous before big games. Successful entrepreneurs feel fear before making important decisions. Great artists feel doubt before creating. The difference is they've learned to act while experiencing these feelings, rather than waiting for them to disappear. Chapter 4. The Psychology of Identity and How It Controls Your Actions. The most powerful force controlling your behavior isn't your goals, your plans, or even your habits. It's your identity. The story you tell yourself about who you are shapes every action you take or don't take. If your identity doesn't align with your goals, you will sabotage yourself every single time. No matter how motivated you feel or how good your system is, understanding and reshaping your identity is the foundation of becoming someone who takes consistent action. Your identity operates like an internal operating system, running in the background of your consciousness and filtering every decision through the question, is this something a person like me would do? If the answer is no, your brain will generate resistance, excuses, and obstacles to prevent you from acting in ways that contradict your self-concept. This is why people can know exactly what they should do and still find themselves unable to do it consistently. Most people have identities built around limitation rather than capability. They see themselves as someone who struggles with discipline, someone who isn't good at follow-through, someone who starts things but doesn't finish them. These identity statements become self-fulfilling prophecies because your brain works tirelessly to maintain consistency between your actions and your self-concept. If you believe you're someone who procrastinates, you'll find ways to procrastinate even when it would be easier to just do the work. The identity trap is particularly dangerous because it operates unconsciously. You don't wake up each morning and consciously decide to act in accordance with your identity. It happens automatically. Your brain scans potential actions and either approves or rejects them based on whether they match your internal story. This is why changing behavior without changing identity is so difficult, and why most behavioral changes don't stick. Consider two people trying to quit smoking. Person A says, "I'm trying to quit smoking." Person B says, "I'm not a smoker." When offered a cigarette, person A has to use willpower to resist because smoking is still part of their identity. Person B doesn't need willpower because accepting the cigarette would contradict their fundamental self-concept. The action that requires enormous effort for person A requires no effort for person B because their identities are different. This principle applies to every area of action and achievement. If you see yourself as someone who isn't disciplined, creating disciplined habits will feel forced and unsustainable. If you see yourself as someone who doesn't follow through, completing projects will feel unnatural and difficult. If you see yourself as someone who isn't successful, taking actions that lead to success will create internal conflict and self-sabotage. The good news is that identity isn't fixed. It's malleable and can be consciously reshaped through deliberate action and mental rehearsal. The key is understanding that identity changes through behavior, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel like a disciplined person before acting disciplined. You act disciplined repeatedly until your brain updates its story about who you are. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. The most effective way to change identity is through small, consistent actions that align with your desired self-concept. If you want to become someone who takes action consistently, start taking small actions consistently. Your brain will notice the pattern and begin updating your identity accordingly. This is why systems that focus on tiny improvements are so powerful. They change who you are at the identity level, which makes larger changes natural and sustainable. Language plays a crucial role in identity formation. The words you use to describe yourself literally shape your self-concept and therefore your actions. Saying, "I am someone who exercises every day," creates different neural patterns than saying, "I am trying to exercise more." The first statement assumes capability and consistency. The second implies struggle and uncertainty. Your brain responds to these linguistic cues and adjusts your behavior accordingly. Visualization and mental rehearsal can also accelerate identity change. When you repeatedly imagine yourself taking action, completing goals, and embodying the characteristics you want to develop, your brain begins to treat these imagined experiences as real memories. This creates familiarity with your future self and reduces the resistance that comes with acting in new ways. The concept of identity stacking is particularly powerful for action takers. Instead of trying to completely remake yourself overnight, you add new identity components to your existing self-concept. If you see yourself as a caring parent, you can add, "Caring parents take care of their health," to include exercise in your identity. If you see yourself as a professional, you can add, "Professionals continuously develop their skills," to include learning and growth. Social identity also plays a massive role in determining actions. Humans are tribal creatures, and we unconsciously adjust our behavior to match the group we identify with. If you spend time with people who consistently take action, your brain will treat action-taking as normal social behavior. If you spend time with people who make excuses and avoid challenges, excuse-making becomes your default mode. This is why changing your environment and social circle can be more powerful than trying to change your mindset. Your brain is constantly calibrating what's normal based on what it observes in your environment. If everyone around you procrastinates and settles for mediocrity, these behaviors will feel normal and acceptable. If everyone around you takes action and pursues excellence, these behaviors become your new baseline. The ultimate goal is developing what psychologists call an action-oriented identity. This means seeing yourself as someone who moves forward despite uncertainty, who takes initiative rather than waiting for permission, who solves problems rather than avoiding them. When this becomes your core identity, taking action stops being something you have to force yourself to do. It becomes something you naturally do because it's who you are. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Action. Building systems that force forward movement. Taking action isn't about summoning willpower or waiting for the right moment. It's about building systems that make action inevitable. The most successful people in any field don't rely on motivation or discipline alone. They create environmental, psychological, and practical frameworks that push them forward automatically. Understanding how to build these systems is the difference between sporadic effort and consistent execution. A true action system removes as much decision-making as possible from the equation. Every decision you have to make throughout the day depletes your mental energy and creates an opportunity for resistance to creep in. By designing systems that operate automatically, you preserve your mental resources for the actual work, rather than burning them up on whether or not to work. The foundation of any action system is environmental design. Your environment is constantly sending signals to your brain about what actions are normal, expected, and easy. If you want to write every morning, leave your laptop open with your document ready the night before. Your morning brain doesn't have to decide whether to write or figure out how to start. The environment has already made those decisions. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes and put your water bottle by the door. You're using environmental cues to eliminate friction and decision fatigue. Trigger-based systems are incredibly powerful because they leverage your brain's existing pattern recognition abilities. Instead of trying to remember to take action, you link new behaviors to existing routines. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write for 30 minutes. After I finish dinner, I will review my goals for tomorrow. After I sit down at my desk, I will tackle my most important task first. These trigger action combinations become automatic with repetition. The concept of minimum viable action is crucial for building sustainable systems. Instead of committing to hour-long workouts, commit to putting on your workout clothes. Instead of committing to writing 1,000 words, commit to writing 1 sentence. The goal isn't to do the minimum forever. The goal is to make starting so easy that resistance can't stop you. Once you start, momentum typically carries you further than your minimum commitment. Batch processing is another powerful system design principle. Instead of making decisions about similar tasks throughout the day, batch them into specific time blocks. Check email only at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Make all your phone calls on Tuesday afternoons. Write all your content on Wednesday mornings. This reduces decision fatigue and creates focused execution periods where you can maintain flow states. Time-based systems work better than goal-based systems for most people because they're process-oriented rather than outcome-oriented. Instead of saying, "I'll work until I finish this project," say, "I'll work on this project from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. The first approach can lead to endless tweaking and perfectionism. The second approach focuses on input rather than output, which is what you actually control. Accountability systems are essential because they externalize the pressure to take action. When you're only accountable to yourself, it's easy to negotiate, make exceptions, and rationalize inaction. When you're accountable to others, the social pressure provides additional motivation to follow through. This could be as simple as telling a friend your daily goals, or as formal as hiring a coach who checks in on your progress. The two-system approach is particularly effective for complex goals. System 1 handles daily maintenance actions that keep you moving forward consistently. System 2 handles weekly or monthly strategic actions that ensure you're moving in the right direction. For example, System 1 might be writing for an hour every morning. System 2 might be reviewing and adjusting your writing goals every Sunday. Both systems work together to create sustained progress. Failure protocols are often overlooked but essential components of action systems. What happens when you miss a day? What happens when you fall behind? Most people treat failure as evidence that their system doesn't work and abandon it entirely. Effective action systems plan for failure and include specific protocols for getting back on track quickly. The rule might be, if you miss one day, you must do a minimum viable action the next day. If you miss 2 days, you must review and adjust your system. Measurement systems provide feedback loops that keep you connected to your progress. What gets measured gets managed, but what gets measured correctly gets optimized. Track input metrics rather than just output metrics. Instead of only tracking pounds lost, track workouts completed. Instead of only tracking income earned, track skills developed and opportunities pursued. Input metrics are under your direct control and lead to output results. Progressive overload principles from strength training apply perfectly to action systems. Start with actions that are almost laughably easy. Then gradually increase difficulty as your capacity grows. If you can barely manage 10 push-ups, don't commit to 100. If you can barely write for 10 minutes, don't commit to an hour. Build your action capacity gradually and sustainably, rather than trying to transform overnight. The concept of system redundancy ensures that your action doesn't depend on any single factor. If your morning writing session depends only on your alarm clock working, you're vulnerable to oversleeping. If it also depends on your coffee maker being ready and your laptop being charged, you have multiple failure points. Instead, build redundant triggers and backup plans that keep your system working even when individual components fail. Energy management is more important than time management for sustainable action systems. Design your systems around your natural energy patterns rather than fighting against them. If you're most creative in the morning, schedule your most important creative work then. If you're most energetic in the evening, that's when you should tackle challenging tasks. Working with your biology rather than against it makes action feel easier and more natural. Recovery and renewal must be built into any sustainable action system. Humans aren't machines, and systems that don't account for rest, reflection, and renewal inevitably lead to burnout. Schedule downtime just as deliberately as you schedule work time. Plan for breaks, vacations, and less intense periods. A system that pushes you to exhaustion isn't sustainable and will ultimately produce less action than a system that maintains your capacity over time. Chapter 6. The Procrastination Murder Weapon. Destroying the root of inaction. Procrastination isn't laziness. It isn't poor time management. It isn't lack of motivation. Procrastination is fear disguised as delay. It's your brain's sophisticated method of protecting you from the possibility of failure, judgment, or discomfort by simply avoiding the situation entirely. Understanding this distinction is crucial because you can't solve a problem you've misdiagnosed. Most people try to overcome procrastination with productivity tips and time management techniques, when what they really need is fear management and psychological reconditioning. The procrastination cycle works like this. You have a task that matters to you. Because it matters, there's pressure to do it well. This pressure activates your brain's threat detection system, which interprets the possibility of failure as danger. To protect you from this perceived danger, your brain generates resistance in the form of distraction, rationalization, and avoidance. You then engage in substitute activities that provide immediate gratification without risk, temporarily relieving the psychological pressure while ensuring that the original task remains undone. This cycle is insidious because the temporary relief from substitute activities actually reinforces the avoidance behavior. Every time you choose to check social media instead of working on your project, you're training your brain that avoidance feels better than engagement. You're literally conditioning yourself to procrastinate by rewarding the behavior with immediate pleasure and relief from discomfort. The perfectionism component of procrastination is particularly destructive. Many procrastinators are actually perfectionists who would rather not try than risk producing something imperfect. They tell themselves they're waiting for the right time, the right mood, or the right circumstances. But what they're really doing is avoiding the vulnerability that comes with putting imperfect work into the world. This creates an impossible standard where nothing is ever good enough to justify starting. Analysis paralysis is another common form of procrastination, where endless research and planning replace actual execution. The procrastinator convinces themselves they need more information, more preparation, or more certainty before they can begin. This feels productive because learning and planning are activities, but they become procrastination when they're used to avoid the risk and discomfort of real action. The key to destroying procrastination is understanding that you don't overcome it by eliminating the underlying fears. You overcome it by acting in spite of the fears. The goal isn't to feel confident before you start. The goal is to start before you feel confident. This requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to discomfort and uncertainty. The 5-minute rule is devastatingly effective against procrastination because it bypasses the fear response entirely. When you commit to working on something for just 5 minutes, the task doesn't feel threatening enough to trigger avoidance behaviors. 5 minutes isn't long enough to fail significantly or produce something embarrassingly bad. But 5 minutes is long enough to create momentum, and momentum is procrastination's greatest enemy. Implementation intentions are another powerful weapon against procrastination. Instead of making vague commitments like, "I'll work on my project later," create specific if-then plans. If it's 2 p.m. and I'm at my desk, then I will open my project file and work for exactly 15 minutes. This removes the decision-making process that procrastination exploits and creates automatic behavioral responses. The concept of productive procrastination can also be useful when managed correctly. Instead of fighting procrastination entirely, you can redirect it toward less important but still valuable tasks. If you're avoiding your main project, have a list of secondary tasks ready. This way, Even when you're procrastinating on your primary goal, you're still being productive and maintaining forward momentum. Environmental manipulation is crucial for procrastination destruction. Remove as many barriers to starting as possible and add barriers to procrastination activities. If you procrastinate by browsing the internet, use website blockers during your work hours. If you procrastinate by watching TV, unplug it and put the remote in another room. Make procrastination harder and action easier by designing your environment to support your goals rather than your avoidance patterns. The procrastination emergency protocol should be activated when you catch yourself in avoidance mode. First, acknowledge what's happening without judgment. Say, "I notice I'm procrastinating," rather than, "I'm such a lazy person." Second, identify the fear driving the avoidance. Are you afraid of failure, judgment, discomfort? Third, commit to the smallest possible action. Open the document. Write one sentence. Make one phone call. Fourth, focus only on starting, not finishing. You can always stop after you start, but you can't continue if you never begin. Time boxing is particularly effective for chronic procrastinators because it provides both structure and escape routes. Commit to working on your task for a specific time period, say 20 minutes, and give yourself permission to stop when the time is up. This reduces the psychological weight of the task because you're not committing to completion, just to engagement. Most of the time, you'll find that starting is the hardest part, and you'll continue working past your time limit. The procrastination paradox is that the things we avoid most are often the things that would improve our lives most dramatically. The tasks we procrastinate on are usually the ones with the highest stakes, the greatest potential impact, and the most significant consequences for our future. This means that overcoming procrastination isn't just about productivity. It's about claiming your life back from fear and taking control of your destiny. Breaking the procrastination habit requires consistent practice of acting despite discomfort. Every time you take action when you don't feel like it, you're building what psychologists call distress tolerance. You're training your nervous system to handle uncertainty, imperfection, and potential failure without automatically defaulting to avoidance. This is a skill that compounds over time and eventually makes action your default response rather than procrastination. Chapter 7. The Momentum Machine. How to generate unstoppable forward motion. Momentum is the closest thing to magic in personal development. When you have momentum, actions that normally require enormous effort feel effortless. Decisions that usually paralyze you become obvious. Progress that typically takes months happens in weeks. Understanding how to generate and maintain momentum is the difference between struggling through life and flowing through it with purpose and power. Newton's first law of motion applies perfectly to human behavior. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest, and objects in motion tend to stay in motion. When you're stuck in inaction, every movement feels difficult because you're fighting against inertia. But once you're moving, maintaining that movement becomes natural because momentum carries you forward. The key is understanding how to overcome initial resistance and generate enough speed to reach the momentum threshold. Most people misunderstand momentum. They think it's about doing big things consistently, but momentum actually comes from doing small things consistently. Big actions are impressive, but often unsustainable. Small actions seem insignificant, but create the compound effect that builds into unstoppable force. A person who writes one page every day will generate more momentum and accomplish more than someone who writes 20 pages once a month. The momentum equation has three components: frequency, consistency, and progression. Frequency means taking action often enough to maintain forward motion. Daily action builds more momentum than weekly action. Weekly action builds more momentum than monthly action. Consistency means taking action regardless of circumstances, mood, or motivation. Progression means gradually increasing the difficulty or intensity of your actions over time. Starting rituals are essential for momentum generation because they create predictable triggers that initiate action automatically. A starting ritual might be as simple as clearing your desk, making a cup of coffee, and opening your project file. The specific actions matter less than their consistency and their signal to your brain that it's time to shift into action mode. Professional athletes have elaborate pre-game rituals, not because they're superstitious, but because rituals create psychological momentum. The concept of minimum effective action is crucial for momentum building. This is the smallest action you can take that still moves you toward your goal. If your goal is to write a book, your minimum effective action might be writing one sentence. If your goal is to get fit, your minimum effective action might be doing one push-up. The point isn't to only do the minimum forever. The point is to ensure that you never break your momentum by having an action that's so small it's impossible to skip. Momentum stacking involves linking new actions to existing momentum streams. If you already have a strong morning routine, you can add new behaviors to that routine rather than trying to create entirely new momentum patterns. If you already exercise consistently, you can add meditation to your post-workout routine. This leverages existing behavioral momentum to power new habits without starting from zero. The momentum destroyer that kills most people's progress is perfectionism. Perfectionists often stop taking action the moment they produce something imperfect or make a mistake. This breaks momentum and forces them to start over repeatedly. The alternative is adopting a progression mindset, where imperfect action is valued over perfect inaction. Forward movement with course corrections beats standing still with perfect form. Celebration and acknowledgement are often overlooked components of momentum generation. Every time you take action, especially when you don't feel like it, you should acknowledge that achievement. This doesn't mean throwing a party for writing one sentence, but it does mean consciously recognizing that you followed through on your commitment. This recognition reinforces the neural pathways associated with action taking and makes future action more likely. The momentum measurement system should focus on consistency streaks rather than just outcomes. Track how many days in a row you've taken action, not just what you've accomplished. A streak of 100 days of writing one page is more valuable than writing 50 pages once, because the first scenario builds momentum while the second doesn't. Streaks create psychological investment that makes breaking the pattern feel costly. Environmental momentum involves setting up your space to support continued action. This means removing barriers to your next action and adding barriers to momentum-breaking activities. If you're building writing momentum, leave your laptop open with your document ready. If you're building exercise momentum, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Your environment should pull you toward action rather than requiring willpower to overcome friction. Energy management is critical for momentum sustainability. Many people build initial momentum through sheer force and then burn out when their energy runs low. Sustainable momentum requires matching your energy expenditure to your energy capacity and building in recovery periods. This means scheduling your most important actions during your peak energy hours and protecting your energy from non-essential activities. The momentum transfer principle allows you to use success in one area to fuel action in another. When you're feeling confident and capable because you just completed a challenging workout, that's the perfect time to make a difficult phone call or tackle a project you've been avoiding. Momentum is emotional as much as it is practical, and positive emotions from one accomplishment can power action in completely different areas. Social momentum leverages the power of environment and community to maintain forward motion. When you surround yourself with people who are also taking action toward meaningful goals, their momentum becomes contagious. You stop seeing action as unusual or difficult and start seeing it as normal behavior. This social proof makes maintaining your own momentum feel natural rather than forced. The compound momentum effect is what separates extraordinary achievers from everyone else. Small daily actions create momentum. Momentum makes larger actions possible. Larger actions create bigger results. Bigger results create more confidence. More confidence enables even larger actions. This creates an upward spiral where your capacity for action grows exponentially rather than linearly. Breaking momentum is easier than building it, which is why momentum protection is so important. Identify the activities, people, and circumstances that tend to break your momentum patterns and develop strategies for managing them. This might mean saying no to certain commitments, avoiding specific environments during crucial momentum-building periods, or having backup plans for when your normal routine gets disrupted. Chapter 8. The Consistency Code. Systems for Relentless Daily Execution. Consistency is the compound interest of personal development. Small actions performed daily create exponential results over time, while sporadic large efforts produce linear results at best. The difference between people who achieve extraordinary things and those who don't isn't talent, intelligence, or even motivation. It's the ability to show up and take action day after day, regardless of circumstances, feelings, or external pressures. Most people fail at consistency because they misunderstand what it requires. They think consistency means being perfect, never missing a day, and maintaining the same intensity forever. This perfectionist approach to consistency guarantees failure because it doesn't account for the reality of human limitations, changing circumstances, and natural energy fluctuations. True consistency is about persistence, not perfection. The foundation of sustainable consistency is the minimum viable commitment. This is the smallest action you can take that still moves you toward your goal and that you can realistically perform every single day, even on your worst days. If you want to build a writing habit, your minimum viable commitment might be writing 50 words. If you want to build an exercise habit, it might be doing 5 push-ups. The key is making your minimum so small that skipping it feels ridiculous. The consistency paradox is that by committing to less, you often achieve more. When you remove the pressure to perform at high levels every day, you eliminate the main reason people break consistency streaks. Most of the time, you'll exceed your minimum commitment because starting is the hardest part. But on difficult days, you can honor your commitment with minimal effort and maintain your streak. Identity-based consistency is more powerful than goal-based consistency because it focuses on who you're becoming rather than what you're achieving. Instead of saying, "I want to write a book," say, "I am a writer," and writers write every day. Instead of saying, "I want to lose weight," say, "I am someone who takes care of their health," and healthy people exercise regularly. This identity-based approach makes consistency feel natural rather than forced. The consistency tracking system should be visible, simple, and emotionally engaging. A basic calendar where you mark each day you complete your action is often more effective than complex tracking apps. The visual representation of your streak creates psychological momentum and makes breaking the pattern feel costly. The longer your streak, the more invested you become in maintaining it. Environmental consistency involves creating the same conditions for your actions as much as possible. This might mean working at the same desk, exercising at the same time, or following the same preparation routine. Consistency of environment reduces decision fatigue and creates automatic triggers that initiate action without requiring conscious thought. Your brain learns to associate specific environments with specific behaviors. The consistency protocol for missed days is crucial because everyone will occasionally break their streak. When this happens, the key is to get back on track immediately rather than using the missed day as an excuse to abandon the habit entirely. The rule should be, if you miss one day, you must take action the next day no matter what. If you miss 2 days in a row, you must examine and adjust your system because something isn't working. Buffer habits create consistency insurance by giving you multiple ways to maintain your streak. If your main goal is to exercise for 30 minutes, your buffer habits might be doing 10 minutes of stretching or taking a 15-minute walk. These alternatives ensure that you can maintain your identity as someone who moves their body daily, even when circumstances prevent your preferred workout. Seasonal consistency acknowledges that your capacity and circumstances change throughout the year. Instead of trying to maintain exactly the same routine year-round, build flexibility into your system. You might write for an hour in the winter when you have more indoor time and 30 minutes in the summer when you're more active outdoors. The key is maintaining the daily action while adapting the intensity to your current situation. The consistency compound effect creates exponential rather than linear progress. Day 1 might feel insignificant. Day 30 starts to feel meaningful. Day 100 creates noticeable results. Day 365 transforms your life. This compounding is why consistency is so powerful and why most people quit before experiencing its true benefits. They judge the system based on short-term results rather than trusting the long-term process. Social consistency leverages accountability and community to maintain your daily actions. This might involve finding an accountability partner who checks in on your progress, joining a group of people working towards similar goals, or simply announcing your commitment publicly. The key is creating external pressure that makes consistency feel inevitable rather than optional. The consistency energy management system ensures that you're not depleting yourself through unsustainable effort. This involves scheduling your most important consistency habits during your peak energy hours, building in recovery periods, and matching your commitments to your actual capacity rather than your ideal capacity. Burnout is the enemy of consistency, and preventing it requires honest assessment of your limits. Micro-consistency focuses on maintaining your habits during challenging periods by reducing them to their absolute essence. During vacation, illness, or particularly busy periods, You might maintain your writing habit by writing one sentence, your exercise habit by doing one push-up, or your learning habit by reading one page. This keeps the neural pathways active and prevents you from having to rebuild momentum from scratch. The consistency celebration system acknowledges milestones and maintains motivation for long-term commitment. Celebrate your 7-day streak, your 30-day streak, your 100-day streak. These celebrations don't have to be elaborate, but they should acknowledge the psychological achievement of sustained action. Recognition reinforces the behavior and makes continuing feel rewarding rather than burdensome. Advanced consistency involves gradually increasing the difficulty or scope of your daily actions as they become automatic. Once writing 50 words daily becomes effortless, you might increase to 100 words. Once 5 push-ups become easy, you might add basic exercises. This progressive approach ensures that your consistency leads to continuous growth rather than maintenance of the status quo. The ultimate goal of consistency training is developing what psychologists call automaticity. This is when actions become so habitual that they require no conscious decision-making or willpower. You brush your teeth without thinking about it because it's automatic. The same can happen with any behavior you practice consistently enough. Once your important actions become automatic, consistency becomes effortless, and your capacity for achievement expands dramatically. Chapter 9. The Obstacle Obliteration Protocol. Destroying everything that stops you. Every meaningful goal you pursue will face obstacles. These obstacles aren't bugs in the system. They're features. They exist to test your commitment, strengthen your capabilities, and separate those who truly want something from those who only think they want it. The difference between people who achieve their goals and those who don't isn't the absence of obstacles. It's their response to obstacles when they inevitably appear. Most people treat obstacles as evidence that they should quit. They encounter resistance, setbacks, or challenges and interpret these as signs that they're on the wrong path or that success isn't meant for them. This victim mindset transforms every obstacle into a permanent barrier. The alternative is developing an obstacle obliteration mindset, where challenges become puzzles to solve rather than reasons to stop. The obstacle anticipation system involves identifying potential barriers before they appear and developing response strategies in advance. If you're starting a business, anticipate cash flow problems and have financing options ready. If you're trying to lose weight, anticipate social pressure and have response scripts prepared. If you're building new habits, anticipate motivation dips and have minimum viable actions defined. Preparation eliminates the shock and paralysis that obstacles often create. Internal obstacles are often more dangerous than external ones because they're invisible and operate through self-sabotage. These include limiting beliefs, fear of success, imposter syndrome, and perfectionism. Internal obstacles convince you that you're not capable, not worthy, or not ready for the success you're pursuing. They operate through subtle mental resistance that feels like your own thoughts and therefore seems valid and true. The limiting belief audit involves identifying and challenging the thoughts that constrain your actions. Write down every reason you give yourself for why you can't achieve your goal. Then examine each reason critically. Is it actually true? Is it always true? What evidence contradicts it? What would be possible if it weren't true? Most limiting beliefs collapse under honest examination because they're based on outdated information or fear rather than current reality. External obstacles include time constraints, financial limitations, lack of resources, other people's resistance, and environmental barriers. While these obstacles are real, they're rarely insurmountable. They require creative problem-solving, resource acquisition, or strategic pivoting rather than abandonment of the goal. External obstacles test your resourcefulness and commitment, but they don't determine your ultimate success or failure. The resource multiplication strategy transforms obstacles into opportunities by forcing creative solutions. When you can't afford professional equipment, you learn to create with basic tools, which often leads to more innovative approaches. When you don't have connections, you develop relationship-building skills. When you don't have time, you learn efficiency and prioritization. Obstacles force you to develop capabilities you wouldn't otherwise need. The pivoting protocol activates when your current approach isn't working despite sustained effort. Pivoting doesn't mean quitting. It means adjusting your strategy while maintaining your commitment to the ultimate goal. If direct application doesn't work, try teaching the skill to others. If starting your own business seems impossible, develop entrepreneurial skills within your current job. If writing a novel feels overwhelming, start with short stories. The support system activation involves leveraging other people to help you overcome obstacles you can't handle alone. This might mean hiring experts, finding mentors, joining communities, or simply asking friends for help. Many people fail because they try to overcome every obstacle independently, when collaboration and assistance could provide easier solutions. Pride and independence become obstacles themselves when they prevent you from accessing available help. The emotional obstacle management system addresses the feelings that obstacles create: frustration, discouragement, anger, and hopelessness. These emotions are normal responses to challenges, but they become problems when they prevent continued action. The key is acknowledging these feelings without being controlled by them. Feel frustrated, then take the next action anyway. Feel discouraged, then show up tomorrow regardless. The persistence versus futility distinction is crucial for obstacle navigation. Persistence means continuing to work toward a goal despite obstacles and setbacks. Futility means continuing to use ineffective approaches despite repeated failure. The difference is adaptation. Persistent people modify their strategies while maintaining their commitment. People trapped in futility repeat the same approaches while expecting different results. The obstacle reframe technique transforms barriers into opportunities by changing your interpretation of challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as problems, see them as training for the person you need to become to achieve your goal. Every obstacle that develops your problem-solving skills, resilience, and creativity is actually preparing you for success. The bigger your goal, the bigger the obstacles you'll need to overcome, and therefore the more you'll grow in the process. The compound obstacle effect means that overcoming one obstacle often makes you stronger for the next one. Each challenge you successfully navigate builds your confidence, skills, and resilience. This is why people who achieve extraordinary things often seem to attract even more obstacles. They're not unlucky. They're operating at levels where bigger challenges are normal, and they've developed the capacity to handle them. Emergency obstacle protocols should be prepared for moments when obstacles feel overwhelming. This might involve taking a strategic break to regain perspective, seeking immediate support from your network, or temporarily reducing your commitments to focus on the most critical obstacle. Having predetermined responses prevents obstacles from creating panic and poor decision-making. The obstacle elimination hierarchy helps prioritize which barriers to address first. Level 1 obstacles can be removed through simple action: making a phone call, doing research, acquiring a skill. Level 2 obstacles require strategic planning and sustained effort: building relationships, accumulating resources, developing expertise. Level 3 obstacles require fundamental changes: relocating, changing careers, transforming your identity. Start with level 1 obstacles to build momentum before tackling higher-level challenges. The ultimate obstacle is often yourself. Your fears, your past conditioning, your comfort zone, and your resistance to growth. External obstacles are temporary and situation-specific. Internal obstacles follow you wherever you go and affect everything you try to achieve. This is why personal development is the most important investment you can make. Every improvement in your mindset, skills, and emotional capacity multiplies your ability to overcome any obstacle you encounter. Chapter 10. The acceleration phase. From steady progress to exponential results. There comes a moment in every journey toward meaningful achievement when steady progress transforms into exponential acceleration. This isn't luck or coincidence. It's the predictable result of accumulated momentum, developed skills, and strategic positioning, reaching a critical mass that creates breakthrough results. Understanding how to recognize and leverage these acceleration phases is what separates good achievers from exceptional ones. Most people never experience true acceleration because they quit during the steady progress phase. They mistake linear improvement for lack of progress and abandon their efforts just before exponential results begin. The acceleration phase often feels like sudden overnight success to outside observers, but it's actually the natural outcome of sustained effort, reaching a tipping point where small improvements create disproportionately large results. The compound action principle drives acceleration by creating feedback loops where your results enable even greater results. When you're building a business, early customers provide revenue that allows better marketing that attracts more customers. When you're developing skills, basic competence enables advanced learning that accelerates mastery. When you're building relationships, initial connections introduce you to better connections. Each cycle amplifies the next. System leverage points create acceleration opportunities by identifying the smallest changes that produce the largest improvements. In business, this might mean optimizing your highest converting marketing channel rather than trying to improve everything simultaneously. In personal development, this might mean focusing on the keystone habit that automatically improves multiple areas of your life. Finding and exploiting these leverage points transforms effort into results exponentially. The acceleration mindset shift involves transitioning from incremental thinking to exponential thinking. Instead of asking, "How can I improve by 10%?" start asking, "How can I improve by 10 times?" This forces you to consider completely different approaches, strategies, and possibilities. Linear improvements require more effort. Exponential improvements require different thinking and often less effort applied in higher leverage ways. Network effect acceleration occurs when your connections and relationships begin working together to create opportunities you couldn't access individually. This happens when you've built enough relationships that introductions become automatic, referrals become frequent, and collaborative opportunities emerge naturally. The network itself becomes a force multiplier that accelerates your progress beyond what individual effort could achieve. Skill stack acceleration develops when seemingly unrelated abilities combine to create unique competitive advantages. A programmer who learns marketing becomes more valuable than someone who's only a programmer or only a marketer. A salesperson who develops analytical skills can identify patterns that purely intuitive salespeople miss. The combination of skills often creates capabilities that are more valuable than the sum of their parts. The reinvestment acceleration strategy involves consistently putting your results back into the system that created them. If you're building wealth, reinvest profits rather than spending them on lifestyle inflation. If you're developing skills, use your new capabilities to access better learning opportunities. If you're growing a platform, use your increased influence to create even more valuable content. Reinvestment creates compound growth that accelerates over time. Technology and automation acceleration happens when you leverage tools and systems to multiply your individual efforts. This might mean using software to automate routine tasks, hiring team members to handle operations while you focus on growth, or building systems that work without your direct involvement. The goal is transitioning from trading time for results to building assets that generate results continuously. The momentum threshold represents the point where your consistent actions have created enough force that progress becomes self-sustaining. Before this threshold, every action requires conscious effort and discipline. After this threshold, not taking action feels unnatural because momentum pulls you forward automatically. Reaching this threshold is what transforms temporary behavior changes into permanent lifestyle shifts. Strategic positioning acceleration involves deliberately placing yourself in environments, relationships, and opportunities where success becomes more likely and more rapid. This might mean moving to a city with better career opportunities, joining organizations where you can meet influential people, or choosing projects that build valuable skills even if they don't pay well initially. Position influences outcomes more than most people realize. The acceleration paradox is that the actions required to reach acceleration often seem unreasonable during the steady progress phase. Writing every day for 6 months without seeing significant results feels excessive until your skills reach the level where opportunities start appearing. Building relationships for years without immediate returns feels wasteful until your network begins creating exponential opportunities. Acceleration requires faith in the process during periods when the process feels ineffective. Crisis-driven acceleration sometimes occurs when obstacles or failures force rapid adaptation and innovation. What initially seems like setbacks can become catalysts for breakthrough thinking and dramatic improvement. Job loss can accelerate entrepreneurship. Health problems can accelerate lifestyle optimization. Relationship endings can accelerate personal development. The key is recognizing crisis as an acceleration opportunity rather than just a problem to survive. Measurement during acceleration phases requires different metrics than during building phases. During building, you measure inputs, actions taken, time invested, skills developed. During acceleration, you measure leverage, results per unit of effort, exponential growth rates, and compound effects. The same metrics that motivated you during steady progress might actually limit your thinking during acceleration phases. The sustainability challenge during acceleration involves maintaining the systems and habits that created your breakthrough while scaling to new levels. Success often creates new pressures, opportunities, and distractions that can derail the very behaviors that generated the success. The temptation is to abandon proven systems for more exciting opportunities, but sustainable acceleration requires maintaining your foundation while building upon it. Planning for multiple acceleration phases involves recognizing that breakthrough moments will occur repeatedly throughout your journey, each requiring different strategies and capabilities. Your first acceleration might be driven by skill development. Your second might be driven by network effects. Your third might be driven by strategic positioning. Preparing for these different types of acceleration helps you recognize and leverage them when they occur. The ultimate acceleration comes from developing the ability to create acceleration in any field or endeavor. This meta skill involves pattern recognition, strategic thinking, and execution capability that transfers across domains. Once you've successfully navigated acceleration phases in one area, you can apply the same principles to accelerate progress in any area of your life. This transforms you from someone who occasionally achieves goals into someone who systematically creates extraordinary results. Chapter 11. The Psychology of Pressure. Using stress and deadlines as action accelerators. Most people view pressure as the enemy of performance, something to be avoided or minimized whenever possible. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that keeps them operating at a fraction of their potential. Pressure isn't the opposite of peak performance. When properly managed and strategically applied, pressure is the catalyst that transforms ordinary capabilities into extraordinary results. The difference between pressure that paralyzes and pressure that accelerates is understanding how to create the right type of pressure in the right amounts at the right times. The human nervous system is designed to perform at higher levels under pressure. This is the physiological foundation of what athletes call being in the zone and what psychologists call flow states. When your brain perceives appropriate challenge and time constraints, it automatically optimizes your attention, increases your focus, and enhances your decision-making speed. The key word is appropriate. Too little pressure creates complacency. Too much pressure creates overwhelm. The sweet spot creates peak performance. Eustress versus distress is the crucial distinction for using pressure effectively. Eustress is positive stress that enhances performance, creativity, and motivation. It's the feeling you get when facing an exciting challenge with adequate resources and capabilities. Distress is negative stress that impairs performance, clouds judgment, and depletes energy. It's the feeling you get when facing overwhelming demands without adequate support or skills. Learning to create eustress while avoiding distress is essential for pressure-based acceleration. Self-imposed deadlines are one of the most powerful tools for creating productive pressure when external deadlines don't exist. The key is making these deadlines feel real and consequential rather than arbitrary. This might involve public commitments, financial stakes, or accountability partnerships that create genuine consequences for missing your targets. A deadline without consequences is just a suggestion, and your brain will treat it accordingly. The urgency creation protocol involves artificially shortening timelines to force rapid decision-making and action. If you normally give yourself a week to complete a project, commit to finishing it in 3 days. If you usually spend a month planning, give yourself 1 week. This compressed timeline eliminates perfectionism, reduces overthinking, and forces you to focus on what actually matters versus what feels thorough or complete. Productive pressure requires matching the intensity of pressure to the complexity of the task. Simple tasks benefit from high pressure and tight deadlines because there's little risk of overwhelm. Complex tasks require moderate pressure with longer deadlines because excessive urgency can impair the careful thinking that complex work requires. Learning to calibrate pressure levels prevents both underperformance from insufficient urgency and poor quality from excessive rushing. The pressure gradient system involves gradually increasing pressure over time rather than applying maximum pressure immediately. Start with comfortable deadlines and progressively shorten them as your capacity and confidence grow. This builds your tolerance for pressure while avoiding the shock that can create resistance and avoidance. Like physical training, pressure tolerance improves through progressive overload rather than sudden maximal effort. Social pressure amplification leverages human psychology's responsiveness to others' expectations and observations. When you announce your deadlines publicly, commit to delivering work to others, or place your reputation on the line, you activate powerful social motivation systems that private commitments can't match. The fear of public failure and the desire for social approval become forces that pull you toward action, even when internal motivation is low. Financial pressure can be strategically created through pre-commitment devices that make inaction costly. This might involve paying for courses or coaching in advance, placing money in escrow that you forfeit if you don't meet deadlines, or making financial commitments that require you to generate income through action. When inaction has a clear financial cost, your brain treats action as necessary rather than optional. The pressure release valve is essential for preventing pressure from becoming overwhelming and counterproductive. This involves building in specific times and methods for reducing pressure when it becomes excessive. This might mean scheduling breaks, having backup plans that reduce stakes, or creating ways to extend deadlines if circumstances change dramatically. Knowing you can reduce pressure makes accepting initial pressure feel safer. Pressure-induced focus works by forcing your brain to eliminate non-essential activities and thoughts. When you have limited time to accomplish something important, your attention automatically filters out distractions and zeroes in on what matters most. This is why some people are most productive right before deadlines, even though they've had weeks to work on the project. The pressure creates the focus that makes rapid progress possible. The artificial scarcity principle creates pressure by limiting available options or resources. If you give yourself unlimited time to make a decision, you might deliberate forever. If you give yourself unlimited budget for a project, you might overcomplicate it unnecessarily. By artificially constraining your options, you force creative problem-solving and rapid decision-making that often produces better results than unlimited resources would. Deadline psychology involves understanding how your brain responds to different types of time constraints. Hard deadlines with severe consequences create different mental states than soft deadlines with minor consequences. External deadlines imposed by others feel different from self-imposed deadlines. Understanding these psychological differences allows you to design deadline structures that create optimal pressure for your specific situation and personality. The pressure conditioning process involves gradually building your tolerance for higher levels of urgency and challenge. Start with low-stakes situations where pressure can't cause significant damage. Then progressively move to higher stakes environments as your capacity grows. Athletes who perform well under pressure have typically conditioned themselves through thousands of practice situations that simulated game day pressure. Pressure timing is crucial because the same amount of pressure applied at different moments can have dramatically different effects. Pressure applied too early in a project can cause premature rushing and poor quality. Pressure applied too late might not leave enough time for quality work. The optimal timing usually involves moderate early pressure to prevent procrastination, followed by increased pressure as deadlines approach to maintain urgency. Recovery from pressure periods is essential for maintaining long-term performance and preventing burnout. High-pressure periods should be followed by intentional recovery periods where pressure is reduced and energy is restored. This cyclical approach allows you to leverage pressure's benefits while avoiding its costs. Sprint, recover. Sprint, recover creates sustainable high performance over time. The pressure mastery mindset involves viewing challenging deadlines and high-stakes situations as opportunities to develop capabilities rather than threats to avoid. When you reframe pressure as training for the person you're becoming rather than judgment of who you currently are, it becomes a tool for growth rather than a source of anxiety. This mindset shift transforms pressure from an external force you endure into an internal resource you leverage. Chapter 12. The Social Force Multiplier. Leveraging others to guarantee your success. Humans are social creatures, and this fundamental aspect of our psychology can be either your greatest asset or your biggest obstacle when it comes to taking action. Most people underestimate the power of social forces in determining their behavior and therefore miss opportunities to leverage these forces for guaranteed success. Understanding how to strategically use social dynamics, accountability, and peer influence can transform you from someone who struggles with consistency into someone who can't help but succeed. The accountability paradox reveals why relying solely on self-discipline is a losing strategy for most people. When you're only accountable to yourself, it's easy to rationalize, make exceptions, and negotiate with your commitments. Your brain becomes both the prosecutor and the defense attorney. And the defense attorney usually wins. When you're accountable to others, you activate powerful social motivations that override personal resistance and create external pressure that feels more compelling than internal pressure. Strategic accountability involves choosing the right people and structures to support your goals rather than randomly asking friends to check in on your progress. Effective accountability partners share similar ambition levels, have complementary skills or knowledge, and understand the importance of both support and honest feedback. They're invested in your success, but not so emotionally attached that they'll enable your excuses or minimize your failures. The commitment escalation ladder involves progressively increasing the stakes and public nature of your commitments to create increasingly powerful social pressure. Level 1 might be telling a close friend about your goal. Level 2 might be announcing it to your social media network. Level 3 might be joining a public challenge or competition. Level 4 might be teaching or coaching others in the area you're developing. Each level increases the social cost of giving up and the social rewards for following through. Peer influence works at a subconscious level that's more powerful than conscious motivation. When you consistently spend time with people who take action, solve problems, and pursue challenging goals, these behaviors become normalized in your mind. Your brain treats the behavior of your peer group as evidence of what's normal and expected, automatically adjusting your own behavior to match. This is why changing your environment often produces more dramatic changes than trying to change your mindset. The mastermind principle leverages collective intelligence and mutual accountability to accelerate individual progress. In a properly structured mastermind group, each member commits to specific goals and regularly reports their progress to the group. The combination of diverse perspectives, shared resources, and mutual support creates results that exceed what any individual could achieve alone. The key is ensuring all members have similar commitment levels and complementary strengths. Competition psychology can be strategically used to drive action even if you're not naturally competitive. This doesn't require formal competitions or aggressive rivalry. It can be as simple as tracking your progress alongside others, working towards similar goals, or participating in friendly challenges with peers. The presence of others pursuing similar objectives often activates subtle competitive instincts that increase effort and consistency without creating unhealthy pressure. The social proof acceleration effect occurs when your actions inspire others to take similar actions, creating a positive feedback loop that reinforces your own behavior. When you consistently take action toward your goals, you become a model for others, which strengthens your identity as an action taker and makes consistency feel more natural. Being someone others look to for inspiration creates additional motivation to maintain your standards. Collaborative accountability involves partnering with others who have complementary goals or skills to create mutual support systems. This might mean partnering with someone who wants to build a business while you want to develop marketing skills, or connecting with someone who wants to improve their health while you want to develop coaching abilities. You help them achieve their goals while they help you achieve yours, creating shared investment in mutual success. The public commitment amplification strategy uses the power of reputation and social observation to create pressure that's stronger than private willpower. When you make your goals and progress public, you activate powerful psychological forces, including the desire to be seen as consistent, reliable, and capable. The fear of public failure and the attraction of public recognition become forces that pull you toward action even when internal motivation is low. Social environment design involves deliberately crafting your social surroundings to support the actions you want to take. This might mean joining groups of people who share your goals, finding mentors who've achieved what you want to achieve, or distancing yourself from people whose attitudes and behaviors undermine your progress. Your social environment is constantly influencing your behavior, so designing it intentionally is crucial for consistent action. The teaching effect creates powerful motivation to learn and apply new concepts because you know you'll need to explain them to others. When you commit to teaching something you're learning, whether formally or informally, you activate different mental processes that enhance understanding and retention. You also create social pressure to actually master the material rather than just consuming it passively. Virtual accountability has become increasingly powerful in the digital age, allowing you to connect with like-minded people regardless of geographic location. Online communities, virtual coaching relationships, and digital accountability apps can provide the social pressure and support that many people lack in their immediate environment. The key is choosing virtual accountability that feels as real and consequential as face-to-face relationships. The reciprocity principle can be leveraged to create sustainable accountability relationships where both parties benefit from the exchange. When you help someone else achieve their goals, they feel obligated to help you achieve yours. This creates self-reinforcing cycles of mutual support that don't depend on charity or one-sided generosity. The best accountability relationships feel like valuable exchanges rather than burdens. Social identity alignment involves connecting your goals to your social roles and relationships in ways that make action feel necessary rather than optional. If you identify as a good parent, you might frame your health goals in terms of being a positive role model for your children. If you identify as a leader, you might frame your professional development in terms of better serving your team. When your goals align with your social identity, achieving them feels socially necessary. Group challenges and cohort-based programs create structured social environments specifically designed to drive action through peer support and collective momentum. Whether it's a writing challenge, fitness program, or business development cohort, these programs combine multiple social forces: accountability, competition, support, and shared experience. Participating in well-designed group challenges often produces more progress in weeks than months of individual effort. The social force multiplication effect occurs when multiple social influences work together to create irresistible momentum toward your goals. When you have accountability partners checking your progress, a peer group normalizing ambitious behavior, public commitments creating reputation pressure, and collaborative relationships providing mutual support, the combined force becomes powerful enough to override any internal resistance. This integrated approach transforms action from something you have to force into something that feels inevitable. Chapter 13. The Environment Design Revolution. Creating conditions that force success. Your environment is silently shaping every action you take and every action you avoid. Most people dramatically underestimate the power of environmental factors in determining behavior, instead believing that success comes primarily from internal motivation and willpower. This is a critical mistake that dooms them to constant struggle against forces they can't see and don't understand. When you learn to design environments that automatically push you toward your goals, success becomes inevitable rather than dependent on daily motivation. The environment-behavior connection operates below the level of conscious awareness, influencing your decisions through subtle cues that your brain processes automatically. The location of your phone determines how often you check it. The arrangement of your kitchen determines what you eat. The setup of your workspace determines how productively you work. These aren't character issues or willpower problems. They're environmental design problems with environmental design solutions. Physical environment optimization involves arranging your space to make desired actions easier and undesired actions harder. If you want to exercise more, place your workout equipment in a visible, accessible location and put obstacles between yourself and sedentary activities. If you want to read more, place books throughout your living space and make accessing entertainment slightly more difficult. Small environmental changes often produce dramatic behavioral changes because they work with your brain's natural tendency to take the path of least resistance. The friction principle states that you'll naturally gravitate toward whatever requires the least effort in your current environment. This means success depends on designing your environment so that productive actions require less effort than unproductive ones. Remove friction from desired behaviors by eliminating barriers, reducing steps, and making tools easily accessible. Add friction to undesired behaviors by creating barriers, adding steps, and making distracting tools less accessible. Digital environment design has become crucial in the modern world because your digital environment influences your behavior as much as your physical environment. The apps on your phone's home screen determine what you do when you pick up your device. The websites bookmarked in your browser determine where your attention goes when you're online. The notifications you allow determine what interrupts your focus. Designing your digital environment with the same intentionality as your physical environment is essential for maintaining productive behavior patterns. Temporal environment design involves structuring your time to automatically trigger desired actions. This includes creating morning and evening routines that set up successful days, scheduling specific times for important activities, and building buffers around crucial tasks to prevent interruption. Your schedule is part of your environment, and designing it intentionally ensures that important actions happen automatically rather than depending on motivation or memory. The cue-based environment leverages your brain's associative learning patterns to create automatic behavioral triggers. When you consistently perform specific actions in specific locations at specific times, your brain forms powerful associations that automatically initiate the behavior when you encounter the environmental cues. A specific chair might become your writing chair. A specific room might become your exercise space. A specific time might become your learning hour. Social environment curation involves deliberately choosing who you spend time with and how you spend time together. Surround yourself with people whose behavior you want to emulate and whose standards challenge you to improve. Minimize time with people whose attitudes and actions pull you toward mediocrity or negativity. Your social environment is constantly teaching your brain what's normal, acceptable, and expected. So designing it intentionally is crucial for long-term success. Information environment control determines what ideas, perspectives, and knowledge influence your thinking and decision-making. The books you read, podcasts you listen to, and content you consume literally shape your mental models and worldview. Designing an information environment that exposes you to high-quality thinking, successful strategies, and inspiring examples automatically improves your own thinking and behavior patterns. The Environment Reset Protocol involves periodically auditing and optimizing your environment to ensure it still supports your current goals. As your objectives evolve, your environment needs to evolve with them. This might mean rearranging your workspace for a new project, updating your social circle as you develop new interests, or modifying your daily routines as your priorities change. Environmental design isn't a one-time activity, but an ongoing optimization process. Constraint-based design uses limitations to create focus and prevent decision fatigue. Instead of having unlimited options, constrain your environment to support specific actions. Keep only healthy food in your house if you want to eat better. Have only work-related materials in your office if you want to focus better. Limit your wardrobe to reduce decision fatigue. Constraints feel limiting, but actually create freedom by eliminating distracting choices. The priming environment includes subtle cues that psychologically prepare you for desired actions before you consciously decide to take them. Visual reminders of your goals, inspirational quotes in strategic locations, and objects associated with successful behaviors all serve as environmental primes that influence your mindset and increase the likelihood of productive action. Your environment can literally program your brain for success. Environmental momentum involves designing your space so that one positive action naturally leads to another. If your workout clothes are laid out next to your work materials, completing your exercise makes it easier to transition to focused work. If your healthy meal prep is visible when you open the refrigerator, eating well reinforces your health-focused identity. Creating these environmental chains multiplies the impact of individual actions. Recovery environment design acknowledges that humans need spaces and times for rest, reflection, and renewal. Creating environments specifically designed for recovery helps you maintain long-term performance while preventing burnout. This might mean having a specific space for relaxation that's free from work materials, or creating evening routines that help you transition from productivity mode to recovery mode. The compound environment effect occurs when multiple environmental factors work together to create irresistible momentum toward your goals. When your physical space supports productive action, your digital environment eliminates distractions. Your social environment normalizes excellence. Your information environment expands your thinking, and your temporal environment creates automatic triggers. The combined effect makes success feel inevitable. This integrated approach transforms your entire life into a system that's designed for achievement. Chapter 14. The Resilience Factory. Building unbreakable mental toughness for sustained action. The difference between people who take action occasionally and those who take action relentlessly isn't talent, intelligence, or even motivation. It's resilience. The ability to continue taking meaningful action despite setbacks, failures, criticism, and internal resistance is what separates temporary achievers from permanent winners. Mental toughness isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through deliberate practice and systematic exposure to challenges that strengthen your psychological capacity. Most people misunderstand resilience as the ability to avoid being affected by difficulties. True resilience isn't about not feeling pain, disappointment, or frustration. It's about feeling these emotions fully while continuing to take appropriate action despite them. Resilient people don't experience fewer setbacks than others. They experience setbacks without allowing them to derail their long-term trajectory. They process challenges differently, recover faster, and extract lessons that make them stronger. The anti-fragility principle goes beyond resilience to describe systems that actually get stronger under stress. While resilient systems can withstand shock and return to their original state, anti-fragile systems improve because of shock and emerge in a better state than before. You can develop anti-fragility by intentionally exposing yourself to controllable stresses that build your capacity, while avoiding uncontrollable stresses that could cause permanent damage. Cognitive resilience involves developing thought patterns that maintain perspective during difficult periods and support continued action despite obstacles. This includes reframing setbacks as information rather than failures, viewing challenges as training rather than punishment, and maintaining long-term perspective when short-term results are disappointing. Your interpretation of events determines their impact on your behavior more than the events themselves. The stress inoculation protocol involves gradually exposing yourself to increasing levels of challenge in controlled circumstances to build your tolerance for stress and uncertainty. Just as vaccines expose you to small amounts of disease to build immunity, stress inoculation exposes you to manageable amounts of difficulty to build psychological resilience. This might mean taking on progressively more challenging projects, seeking feedback that pushes you out of your comfort zone, or placing yourself in situations that require rapid adaptation. Emotional regulation skills are fundamental to sustained action because unmanaged emotions can derail even the best plans and systems. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means developing the ability to acknowledge emotions without being controlled by them, to process feelings without being paralyzed by them, and to maintain behavioral consistency despite emotional volatility. The failure reframe system transforms setbacks from action stoppers into action accelerators by changing how you interpret and respond to unsuccessful attempts. Instead of viewing failure as evidence that you should quit, view it as data about what doesn't work and information about what to try next. This reframe maintains momentum during difficult periods and prevents single failures from becoming permanent defeats. Recovery protocols ensure that you can bounce back quickly from setbacks without losing significant momentum. This includes having predetermined responses to common types of failures, maintaining perspective about temporary defeats in the context of long-term goals, and developing systems for analyzing what went wrong without dwelling on past mistakes. Quick recovery is often more important than avoiding failure entirely. The adaptation advantage involves developing the ability to modify your approach rapidly when circumstances change, rather than rigidly sticking to plans that no longer work. Resilient action takers are flexible in their methods while remaining fixed on their objectives. They pivot strategies without pivoting goals, adjust tactics without abandoning vision, and modify systems without losing consistency. Mental toughness training involves deliberately practicing action-taking under increasingly difficult conditions. This might mean working when you're tired, making decisions when you're uncertain, or pursuing goals when external support is lacking. Like physical muscles, mental toughness grows stronger through progressive resistance training, where you gradually increase the psychological weight you can handle. The support system activation strategy ensures that you have multiple sources of encouragement, advice, and assistance available when your individual resources feel depleted. This includes mentors who can provide perspective during difficult periods, peers who can offer encouragement when motivation is low, and professionals who can provide specialized help when problems exceed your current capabilities. Having multiple support sources prevents any single relationship from becoming a critical failure point. Perspective maintenance involves developing the ability to see temporary setbacks in the context of long-term progress, and to maintain awareness of your growth even when current circumstances feel overwhelming. This includes keeping records of past successes to review during difficult periods, maintaining awareness of skills you've developed through previous challenges, and remembering that most current problems are temporary rather than permanent. The adversity advantage reframes challenges as opportunities to develop capabilities you wouldn't otherwise need. Every obstacle that forces you to think creatively, every setback that requires you to develop new skills, and every failure that teaches you valuable lessons is actually preparing you for future success. The bigger your goals, the bigger the challenges you'll face, and therefore, the more you'll grow in the process of pursuing them. Energy management during adversity involves maintaining your physical and mental resources during challenging periods, rather than allowing stress to deplete your capacity for sustained action. This includes prioritizing sleep and nutrition during difficult times, maintaining exercise routines that support stress management, and protecting time for activities that restore rather than drain your energy. The compound resilience effect occurs when multiple resilience-building practices work together to create psychological strength that's greater than the sum of its parts. When you combine cognitive reframing with emotional regulation, stress inoculation with support systems, and adaptation skills with recovery protocols, you develop comprehensive mental toughness that can handle virtually any challenge without derailing your long-term trajectory. The ultimate goal of resilience building is developing what psychologists call grit, the ability to maintain effort and interest toward long-term goals despite failures adversity, and plateaus in progress. Grit combines passion and perseverance for long-term objectives and is the single best predictor of success across virtually every domain of human achievement. When you develop true grit, temporary setbacks become irrelevant because your commitment operates at a level that transcends daily circumstances. Chapter 15. The Unstoppable Identity. Becoming someone who can't help but succeed. The ultimate transformation isn't just learning to take action consistently. It's becoming the type of person for whom taking action feels natural, inevitable, and effortless. When action-taking becomes part of your core identity, rather than something you have to force yourself to do, you transcend the need for motivation, willpower, and external pressure. You become someone who can't help but succeed because success becomes an automatic expression of who you are, rather than something you have to work to achieve. Identity transformation is the most powerful form of personal change because it operates at the level of self-concept rather than just behavior. When you see yourself as someone who takes action, solves problems, and pursues excellence, these behaviors flow naturally from your sense of self. When you see yourself as someone who struggles with consistency, procrastinates, or settles for mediocrity, these behaviors also flow naturally from your identity. The key is consciously reshaping your identity to align with the person you want to become. The identity behavior loop explains why some changes stick while others don't. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. When you take action despite not feeling like it, you're voting for being someone who follows through. When you avoid difficult conversations, you're voting for being someone who chooses comfort over growth. These votes accumulate over time and eventually determine your identity, which then drives future behavior. Becoming an action-oriented person requires deliberately choosing actions that align with this identity even when they feel unnatural at first. Start with small actions that clearly demonstrate follow-through. Making your bed every morning, arriving early to appointments, completing small commitments exactly as promised. These actions might seem insignificant, but they're building evidence that you're someone who does what they say they'll do. The excellence mindset involves shifting from asking, "What's the minimum I can do?" to asking, "What's the best I can do with my current resources?" This doesn't mean perfectionism or working excessive hours. It means bringing full attention and effort to whatever you're doing, whether it's a major project or a routine task. Excellence becomes a standard of engagement rather than an outcome you occasionally achieve. Values-based action ensures that your behavior flows from your deepest beliefs and principles rather than external expectations or temporary emotions. When you identify your core values and align your actions with them, taking action feels meaningful rather than forced. If you value growth, learning new skills becomes natural. If you value contribution, helping others becomes automatic. If you value integrity, keeping commitments becomes non-negotiable. The compound identity effect occurs when multiple identity components reinforce each other to create unstoppable momentum. When you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, committed, growth-oriented, solution-focused, and action-oriented, these identity components work together to create behaviors that support all of these characteristics simultaneously. You don't have to remember to act disciplined because disciplined action flows from your identity. Professional identity adoption involves studying and modeling the mindsets, behaviors, and standards of people who've achieved what you want to achieve. How do successful entrepreneurs think about risk? How do elite athletes approach training? How do accomplished writers handle rejection? By adopting professional standards before achieving professional results, you accelerate your development and begin operating at higher levels immediately. The mastery orientation involves focusing on becoming excellent at the process of achievement rather than just achieving specific outcomes. When you develop mastery-level skills in goal setting, system design, obstacle navigation, and consistent execution, you become someone who can succeed in virtually any domain because you've mastered the fundamental processes that create success in any field. Internal scorecard development means learning to measure your success based on your own standards and values, rather than external validation or comparison to others. When your sense of achievement comes from living up to your own principles and making progress toward your own goals, you become immune to the motivation-killing effects of criticism, setbacks, and other people's opinions. The contribution identity involves seeing yourself as someone whose actions make a positive difference in the world rather than someone who just pursues personal gain. When you connect your goals to something larger than yourself, taking action feels meaningful rather than selfish. This might mean pursuing financial success to provide for your family, developing skills to solve important problems, or building platforms to share valuable ideas. Legacy thinking expands your time horizon beyond immediate results to consider the long-term impact of your consistent actions. When you think about the person you're becoming through your daily choices and the impact your developed capabilities will have over decades, temporary discomfort and delayed gratification become easier to accept because you're investing in compound returns that will pay dividends for years. The integrated life approach involves aligning all areas of your life around your core identity and values, rather than compartmentalizing different roles and behaviors. When your professional actions, personal relationships, health habits, and recreational activities all reflect the same underlying principles, you eliminate internal conflicts and create coherent momentum toward becoming the person you want to be. Unconscious competence represents the ultimate goal of identity transformation, reaching the point where excellent actions happen automatically without conscious effort or decision-making. Just as you brush your teeth without thinking about it, you want to reach the point where taking action toward your goals, solving problems creatively, and maintaining high standards become unconscious behaviors that flow from your identity. The exponential return phase occurs when your transformed identity begins creating opportunities, relationships, and results that would have been impossible with your old way of operating. People begin to see you as someone who gets things done and offer you opportunities accordingly. You begin to attract others who share your standards and values. Your reputation becomes a force multiplier that accelerates your progress beyond what individual effort could achieve. The teaching imperative involves sharing what you've learned about action-taking and achievement with others who are still struggling with consistency and follow-through. Teaching others solidifies your own identity transformation and creates accountability that prevents you from reverting to old patterns. When others look to you as an example of what's possible, maintaining your standards becomes not just personal development, but social responsibility. The ultimate realization is that becoming someone who can't help but succeed isn't about reaching a destination where life becomes easy. It's about developing the capabilities, mindset, and identity that allow you to navigate any challenge, pursue any goal, and create any result you're committed to achieving. When taking action becomes part of who you are rather than something you do, success becomes inevitable because you become unstoppable.